particularly when, say, there is a banter that goes on between two people, which is not to hurt someone, it can most often be called teasing. But very, very quickly, teasing can go into the realm of bullying. And how do you make sure that when you're teasing someone, it does not injure that person or it does not cause that person any discomfort? So it's a very uncomfortable line between bullying and teasing, and thereby I would always say that let's not go into both of it. To understand that a little better, let's find out what bullying is all about. Now, bullying is basically any aggressive behavior in which someone tries to intentionally and repeatedly cause another person injury or harm. Wherein a one-time incident where I call someone Chashmish or call someone Motu or Kalu might not exactly be bullying, it still goes into the realm of uncomfortable conversation, creating discomfort to another person. Now, see, a lot of the name calling or say a lot of the teasing and bullying that we undergo comes from a lot of places. It can be based on our race, it can be based on our body size, it can be based on our gender, sexual orientation. What's very important to remember is when we are being bullied or teased, it's most often the unattractive or the attributes that we believe are not very good or less than flattering that we pick up on another person. We are all not new to bullying, isn't it? I mean, I doubt if there's anyone in this group who's not been bullied or teased in some form or the other. The sad part is it's not only from the so-called aggressive people or the so-called mean people that you experience such experiences from. A lot of times you experience bullying or teasing even from your family members. It can be from your friend circle. It can be from even strangers on the road, isn't it? Just let's take a pause and say, think if we've actually called people by certain names because of the way that they look. Say, even when we were talking about the coronavirus right in the beginning, it was even called the Asian virus. So that's how bullying happens at a very large level. It can be because of your race, it can be because of your culture, it can be because you study very well. So it's not even about attributes which are negative in nature. Sometimes it can also be things which are, say, because you're a teacher's pet, or probably because you're coming from a very high socioeconomic background. All of these can probably make you victim to bullying. So it's not just a particular area that can be picked upon. The other sad part about bullying or teasing is that no age group is safe from the aspect of bullying. Yes, probably children in the school age are more vulnerable to direct traditional bullying. To just make it more evident, if we think about the various sports persons that we've seen, or say the social media influencers that we know, if you look at their comment section, you'll see a lot of bullying that happens even on their profiles. So no age is actually safe from being bullied. Similarly, for any gender, it's from what research shows, it is not. It's very consistent. All the research are very consistent in saying that it's not any one gender who's more subject to bullying, nor are there more male bullies or female bullies. It's more equal in number. So the victims are also probably equal number of females and males, and so are the bullies in nature. The difference over here comes from where in males they engage more in aggressive or direct bullying, wherein in females it's more in terms of indirect bullying or relational bullying. So girls are just as likely as boys to be bullies, but they most likely engage in they engage in probably manipulation of relationship, or maybe say engage in social isolation, or threatening to withdraw friendship from another person, or maybe even give the silent treatment. So it's what also commonly happens is the fact that bullying becomes very ingrained into the person that you are. Let me just give you an example. If you look into your phone directory, or your contact list in your phone, are there people whom you've given nicknames based on, say, how they look, or say their sexual orientation? A lot of times this is not ill-natured. It's probably part of the teasing that you talk about. Say you call someone Chotu and that person is forever named Chotu, and in the entire group that person is always known as Chotu. You see, even how and it goes on probably throughout the life, where all your life that person is stored in your contact list by the name Chotu. So that's how long term an impact of bullying or teasing can be. Let's just look at what are the different types of bullying now. Can we move on? Yes, thank you. So when we look, since I talked about the difference between females and males in terms of bullying, I'll just bring about some different types of bullying. Now, bullying can be physical in nature, where there is actual aggression in terms of maybe hitting that person, or say kicking, punching, showing mean signs with your hands. That constitutes physical bullying. There can be verbal bullying, where you engage in name calling or make offensive remarks about another person. There can also be indirect bullying, where it includes excluding another person from the group, or say spreading rumors about someone, or exaggerating stories about another person. Social alienation is also a common type of bullying, where you engage in excluding another person from the group because of their differences. Like I said, it does not necessarily have to be because of a negative trait. It can also be just because that person studies probably a lot more than maybe as a first ranker in the class. You tend to alienate that person thinking that that person's only good for studying, that person's maybe say not interesting enough, and so on. Bullying can also be intimidating in nature, wherein you use direct or indirect threats against people. Now, with the ubiquitous, availability of cell phones and internet at all times, cyberbullying is another very, very important and common type of bullying that we are undergoing at most times. I'm just going to spend a little bit more time on cyberbullying because I feel a lot of us are particularly more prone to cyberbullying at this point in time. Now, when we look at cyberbullying, so from the term itself, I hope you all understand that cyberbullying basically means bullying through the mass media. It can be through internet, it can be through, say, Facebook comments, Instagram chats, it can be through various other apps that we use. Now, there are some reasons why this cyberbullying becomes extremely important. Next, please. So, some attributes about cyberbullying makes it even more dangerous than probably traditional bullying. There's always a lot of conflict in terms of research when we talk about traditional bullying versus cyberbullying in terms of which is more harmful, what impacts are much more longer lasting. The sad truth is that even cyberbullying is as impactful as traditional bullying, wherein probably in a traditional bullying setup, there is more violence, or say there are bodily harms that a person undergoes. Even in cyberbullying, there are harms or torture to the mental psyche of the person, which might be very, very long lasting. Now, because of the component of invisibility in cyberbullying, that when you're talking over net, there is a component of invisibility. So it takes away the component of fear from the people, because after all, how many people finally engage in filing a complaint from about someone who's been bullying them, or say how often is it that you have to come face to face with the person who has cyberbullied you? So invisibility almost increases the ferocity or the potency of the bullying instances. Now, another component of cyberbullying is about the anonymity factor. So what happens is that it's almost like a dissociative identity. So when we talk about invisibility versus anonymity, what happens in an area where you're controlled only over the internet is that there's a tendency to compartmentalize yourself, to feel that the person who you are online is different from who you are in real life. Say the person who writes those comments or who trolls a celebrity online is not me. It's just a cyber part of me, or it's just another part of me, which is probably what everybody else does. Again, because of the component of anonymity, the fear of punishment is also much lesser, and hence, when you don't have to face your victim face to face, the ferocity of your bullying also tends to become a little bit more higher. In all sorts of bullying, it's important to understand the bystander effect. Most often, bullying is a very group phenomena. It's most often a group phenomena, it's never an individual phenomena. But even in traditional bullying, you often see that people don't stand up for another person. There are probably a lot of people who are seeing the incident happen, but not too many people who interfere in between. Sometimes a bully is part of a huge group. The others are probably only giggling or say sniggering when the entire attack is happening. But in cyberbullying, what makes it even more dangerous is the fact that there is diffusion of responsibility. Say everybody feels that someone else will respond, or yeah, there are 100 comments over here. What does it matter if I try and support this person? It wouldn't even matter so much. So people tend to not support the person who is being bullied. The other dangerous tenet of cyberbullying is because of the large audience. When compared to a traditional bullying setup where we have a very small audience, a cyberbullying incident usually gets spread like wildfire, particularly because the media access is so large. The other sad part is about the permanence of it. Say once something is online, the threads of it usually stays online forever. And unlike a traditional bullying incident where, after the face-to-face incident is over, there is some downtime. Like say, for example, when you go back to home from college, you're away from your bully. Unfortunately, the cyberbullying incident can be a constant thing where, even if you're at home, you're constantly getting messages or comments on your phone. So, which makes it even more difficult. Now, let's try and find out who is a bully. Is someone born a bully? Is someone, what do we all think? Is it that, a bully is born, someone who has genetic characteristics and this person becomes a bully? Most often it's not. So there's only a very small, there is a proportion of research that talks about how people who've had parents who are very aggressive in nature, that gets transmitted, and that facilitates a person into becoming a bully. But more than that, there are other factors such as individual factors, and there are family factors, peer related factors which contribute to a person becoming a bully. Now, see, everybody probably wants to become liked, or wants to get a sense of support from people, isn't it? Like everybody wants to probably become, have a social status or have a sense of attention from people. Most often, what is seen in terms of people who end up bullying is that they possibly have a skill deficit. So a skill deficit which does not engage, which does not let them form friends or get a sense of friendship the way it usually is, but usually is in terms of having good relationships with people. So such people, when they have a skill deficit, tend to get that, or engage in bullying as a way to get that sense of social status or power. Unfortunately, even negative attention is attention, isn't it? When we talk about victims, they also might have some skill deficit in terms of difficulty in being assertive, difficulty in terms of talking to other people, and so on. Some proportion of the people might also have psychological disorders like conduct disorders, say, which end up making people have low, or which means that people might have low empathy, low types of relating to different people, and so on. A negative self-concept is also a very strong critical element in predicting both bullying as well as victimization. So say sometimes, pure victimization, it can activate negative self-thoughts such as I'm a loser and everyone hates me. And that might lead to perception of, oneself as being unloved or unworthy. And that probably can maybe, keep you away from the world in general. But at the same time, a negative self-concept also ends up not making you want to be, or not making you assertive when there is an attack happening against you. So it can also be, it's almost like a chicken or egg conundrum when we talk about self-concept and being a bully or being a victim. It's also important for us to look at family characteristics. So it's been very often seen that when bullies do come from families where there is low level of family engagement or family support. Say they also probably come from a family environment where there is hostility, or they see domestic violence in the family. Aggression is often seen as a method of solving problems in the family. These are certain characteristics that create bullies within the family system. It can also be that a family system where there is not enough conversations or enough family involvement does not provide enough support to a victim, and hence promotes the cycle of victimization. So family characteristics are also very important for us to remember. Similarly, in terms of peer relationship, like I was saying a little earlier, the peer group that you belong to, the society that you belong to, if there is a good, healthy engagement, healthy relationship pattern within your peers and within your society, it tends to protect you from being a bully as well as from being a victim. And the opposite is also relatively true.
You can reach out to Therapeute with queries related to mental health. And before you go, don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe to our Therapeute channel. Thanks for watching. See you very soon.